Welcome to the Resilient Recruiter Podcast. This is your host, Mark Whitby. My special guest today is Boris Epstein. Boris is the founder and CEO of Binc, the technology industry's dedicated flexible recruiting team. Binc has grown to 150 people and won Best Workplace Awards 2 years in a row. Their clients include PayPal, Tesla, Airbnb, Pinterest, Dropbox, to name just a few. And part of their vision is a world where recruiting is elevated from job filler to trusted strategic partner and seen as a profession of choice, able to attract the best and brightest in our industry. You can find out more about them at www.bincsearch.com. That's spelled B-I-N-C. So today we're going to talk about growing a successful recruiting company, including the importance of company culture. We're going to talk about recruiting service differentiation, value proposition development, and unique recruiting models. So I'm super excited. Boris, welcome. Thanks for doing this today.
Hi, Mark. Yeah, great to meet you, and excited to be here and share. All
right, fantastic. So by the way, this is going out just before the July 4th weekend. So happy Independence Day.
Thank you. Yeah, happy Independence Day to you and everyone listening.
Awesome. All right. So you were referred to me by our mutual friend, Rich Rosen. Understand you're part of the Pinnacle Society as well. How long have you been involved with that organization?
Yeah, Rich, a great friend and colleague. I've been in Pinnacle since 5 years into my recruiting career. I'm going on 18 right now. So 13 years ago. And it's been incredible experience. Pinnacle made up of top billers, top billing recruiters from around the country. And it's an incredible place to learn and develop and share and interact with like-minded recruiters like Rich and others.
All right. Awesome. Yeah. Rich is a great guy. We had a really fun conversation. What's interesting is he's a huge proponent of old school outbound telephone marketing to build a client base and keep in regular contact with your clients. And you said to me that a lot of your clients come from inbound marketing. What sort of inbound marketing do you guys have in place?
So the way that our service model is set up, I'll share with our service model, and then it'll connect to what our lead gen looks like. Our service model is set up such that when a technology company that's growing needs to hire and doesn't have the internal team or has some gap between whatever their internal recruiting team can do and whatever their total hiring demand looks like, they'll bring in a Binc, a team or a recruiting individual from us. We'll assign those individuals to operate in a fully dedicated fashion to that company. They'll operate under the umbrella brand of that company. So they're engaging with the internal team and with candidates under the brand of the company. So as if they're an extended member of the team. Because of that, we become very intimately connected to the individuals that work there, whether it's the internal recruiters, the internal recruiting leaders, the interviewing team, any parties related to that company that have a vested interest in recruiting, like board members, venture capitalists. And because of our high likelihood and high degree of previous success, it's common for our name to be associated with success in recruiting. So that multiplied times what we've been running at for the last 3-4 years, 30 companies at a time in perpetuity, has developed this reputation where Binc has become associated with effective embedded recruiting, quality team members, likelihood of success, very solution oriented. And so what I just described matches with the value proposition that's represented on our website. It matches with how we engage with new clients, prospective clients, past clients. So we've done a good job at defining what our value proposition is, distinguishing it in a very clear and legible and consistent fashion from website to how our team members describe it, et cetera. And then because of that embedded service model, the relationships that we develop convert into new lead gen as either that company needs more help, or in our industry, tenure is really low. So it's common, I think the average tenure in the think the average tenure in the technology industry now is like a year and a half or something like that, which means the relationships that we're developing spawn out into new companies. And so establish a relationship with X person, that person moves on to new company has a recruiting challenge, that person knows to reach out to Binc. And so through that cumulative effort, Binc is the very, very beneficial and appreciative recipient of inbound lead generation whenever that use case exists at a prospective company.
Got it. So it's more positive word of mouth than an actual inbound lead gen, strategy like, pay-per-click advertising or
100%.
Social media or whatever. Okay.
100%.
I get it. Okay, cool. So you have offices in Palo Alto, Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, Las Vegas, Austin, and I think a couple of other places. How are your team distributed, and what percentage of them are sitting in your offices versus sitting in your client's office?
Yeah, good question. So all those locations are places where where Binkers, our team members, live and reside. We actually, as of today, present day, and not too long ago, we have 0 physical offices. So we relieved ourselves, and I mean, not surprising given all going on in the world of COVID. We relieved ourselves of any shared workspace. We had shared space in Vegas, Austin, New York, a couple in the Bay Area. We relieved ourselves of all of those commitments, and we had one large local office in Los Angeles where we had about 40 or 50 people working out of there. We're in the process of relieving ourselves of that. Our lease is up at the end of the month. So by the end of the month, we'll be 100% fully distributed with no physical footprint for an office. I believe last I checked, we had Binkers in 11 states. Couldn't name all the cities, and then a fair amount of fluidity in terms of people moving from city to city or considering move from city to city. Pre-COVID, I would say probably in the high 20% of people were working on site at our client offices. So we have a model where if whoever it is that we assign to a client happens to be local to that client company, then they'll go work on site at the company just like any of the other team members would. Right now, everyone, however, is distributed with no real line of sight to when working in office is going to be required or will even be a consideration.
Yeah. Well, no kidding. I mean, we'll get into that. We'll get into the whole pandemic and then what the next normal looks like for you guys. But so setting that to one side, ordinarily, how does your service model actually work in practice? I mean, it sounds really cool, but I don't really understand what that would involve.
Yeah. So the way the service model works, let's say technology company needs to hire 100 people over a 1-year period. Let's say they have an internal team that's able to deliver 50 of those hires. What the company would do is engage with Binc for the remaining 50 hires. And so in engaging with Binc, Binc, let's say, would dedicate 2 or 3 fully dedicated either recruiters or combination of recruiter sourcers to work with that company, let's say for a 6-month period to fulfill on whatever that hiring target ended up looking like. If not the full 50, then maybe 20 or 30 or some segment of that. We would fully assign our team members. The service model, the way the cost works is they would pay us per resource assigned per month. It would be a flat fixed monthly cost for that period of time. We would commit to like a 6-month period or something like that. And then the company's commitment to us again would be that flat monthly fee per month worked. And our commitment to them would be the fully dedicated individual for that respective length of time. Once our individual is operating under the brand and fully dedicated to the company, then they do all the same things that a recruiter or sourcer would do. They would engage with the hiring leaders, understand what the roles are, understand what the value prop of the company is, value prop of the role, target demographic of the role. Then they would go take all that information, go start market mapping, developing short lists of target candidates, develop the value proposition, go engage those candidates, manage those candidates through the full life cycle, introduce them to the company, help arrange all the interviews, help negotiate offers, close, and they would do that times the number of hires that they were required to make. So that's how the service model works, and that's how the recruiters interact and engage with these respective companies.
All right, awesome. Wow, I can see how you get really close, with your clients. So do you have separate team members at Binc who are responsible for kind of client development and account management or business development, those sorts of activities?
No, so all of our recruiters are dedicated to clients. We have partner level individuals or execs who are primarily responsible for account management at the executive level, team member accountability and delivery responsibility, and then they're responsible for business development activities as any lead gen comes through, or in the engaging, interacting with their respective network to nurture and convert it to new business.
Got it. Okay, that sounds cool. So I guess my biggest question then, based on what you've shared so far, Boris, is, I know that you guys pride yourselves on company culture. How do you create a cohesive culture if everyone's distributed?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's not an easy or insignificant thing to do. We put a lot of effort into it. So in creating a company culture, key criteria in doing that is one, it's important to have a really clear mission and vision for the company. So everyone has to be marching towards a comparable beat. It's important for there to be a consistent set of values that the company has defined as authentic, and take steps in living those values. There are many companies that have mission and values written on their website. A lot of companies don't have a mission and values at all. Some next set of companies have a mission values that are written on their website, but when you go and actually interact with a company, you see that the mission and values aren't actually lived. The companies that are able to operate in a strong cohesive within a strong cohesive culture take steps to proactively live their mission and values in a visible fashion, and that's what bonds the group together. Then from there, there are a number of very tactical things around promoting communication, creating a really nice team engagement and connection rhythm, so that people always feel some connection to their team, to their larger organization, to their company, and then doing that with like-minded folks, all in service of a common mission, is what creates that company culture.
All right, cool. Fantastic. Yeah, I totally agree with what you said about values and mission and vision. And so question for our listeners is, to be honest with yourself, if you're a business owner, and ask, number one, do we have a clear vision, mission, purpose, and clear values? Are the values still relevant, and were the current team involved in some way, shape, or form in that thought process? Or are they just sort of, here's our values, and you're pushing those? But most importantly, if you do have, clear values that you feel are a true reflection of what your culture is all about, do the team actually know what they are? If you went out onto the sales floor and asked your team, do you know what our values are? How many would be able to answer?
Yeah. Values are really big. We went through the exercise a few years ago to define our values. It took quite a bit of time. It took almost 9 months to define our values, the right words, the right level of resonance. Then once you define your values, then it's what are the ways we could make these values visible within insert all parts of your company. How are our values visible in business development, or lack thereof? How are our values visible in our review and promotion cycle? How are our values visible in our client engagements? And once you go through that exercise, you could very clearly see, oh, this value is very visible here. This value is very not visible here. Okay, well, what steps could we take to raise the visibility of our value in this area? And then you engage with the team, you start to take steps towards that, and you find yourself, day in and day out living your values. You engage with them. It's not a matter of being, perfect with your values. You can't say that I'm at 100% respect day in and day out, because say, oh, okay, I missed an opportunity to look at this through the lens of respect. How might this situation look if I did look at it through the lens of respect? Oh, okay, it helps clarify a path forward. Okay, great, let's now move forward. Or how would this situation look through the lens of we culture, which is like our word for team? Oh, okay, if I looked at this situation through the lens of we culture, then I might go about it in XYZ way. Okay, that sounds like a great path forward. And so those are examples of ways that an organization can live their values.
I love it. That makes total sense. Tell me, could you give me an example of like how you would make the values visible in a performance review and promotion setting?
Yeah, I think in a promotion review, in a promotion or a review setting, there's a couple of different constituents. There's the person who's delivering the review, and let's just take the value of respect. It's important that the person delivers the review through the lens of respect for the individual, respect for the process, respect for all peers of team members. There's the constituent of the person receiving the review. It's important for that person to receive the review through the lens of respect for the work that they've completed, respect for the equity of the experience, and then the third constituent might be the organization or all other team members that are not sitting in that review period. And so mindfulness of those three constituents through the lens of that value might be might be a way to make that value visible in that respective situation. It's almost like making it top of mind and then delivering the experience through that respective lens.
I get it. So it's not so much that respect is something that you're going to measure them on in the evaluation. It's more that the way that the evaluation is conducted is consistent with the value of respect.
Oh, okay, yeah, I get your question. How might a team member be measured on their values alignment? So
sure.
Yeah, the way that we've set that up is so we expect all team members to align with our values. The most junior team members are expected to develop awareness. So can you see these values? Maybe you're not quite ready to fully embody them, but can you at least take steps to begin to see them in different parts of our organization? Next level up is expected to live in accordance with the values, and then as people move into senior ranks, they're expected to mentor and guide others in living the values, and then our management and leadership are expected to hold their team accountable to the living of the values. That's how we infuse values in performance reviews in accordance with different people's levels.
Cool. All right. That makes a lot of sense. So we've talked a little bit about culture and how critical values are to creating a consistent culture, even though people may not be in the same office or even, they may be on site with a client. One of the challenges I can see with having a distributed workforce, and I think this is going to become more and more normal, right? And more companies are going to go this way after the pandemic. Even when they're allowed to go back to the office, I think there may be a preference for a lot of people to continue working this way from the company's point of view to reduce the fixed overheads, and from the employee's point of view to have more balance and less time commuting and so on. But one of the aspects that makes that I think is difficult is, well, two things. Number one, how do you train new people without them sitting alongside more experienced team members and kind of absorbing that knowledge and those skills outside of the classroom on a day-to-day basis? And number two, can you really create the same level of camaraderie when you're not like socializing, you're not spending like 8-10 hours with someone every day? Do you have that same, cohesiveness? What are your thoughts on those 2 points?
Yeah, that's a good question. Shifting to a remote and distributed culture is definitely paradigm shifting from those who associate normal or effective with in office. I think COVID has helped us COVID has helped those folks who are used to in office see what the world of possibility looks like in a distributed fashion, because COVID has given people no choice but to find effectiveness in that regard. So it's almost kind of expedited the path to that. As it relates to the two questions that you asked, so like how do you train and develop people? So I'll share with you like how we do it, and then there's a version of this for near anything you could imagine having a level of effectiveness in office, and a distributed version. But the training team members, so we shifted to a model where we went from local training. We used to like fly anyone who we hired into a physical location and train them all physically, because that's what we associated with, like, being most effective. Then we realized that we could be equally effective training people in a virtual or distributed capacity. So then we shifted over to completely distributed, where even if 2 or 3 people were in a local situation, they were equally given, screens and the recipients of materials in a virtual capacity. They would like sit in different rooms, basically, but even if they were in the same building. Once the classroom style training is completed, then the team members are assigned to project, and commonly the way that they then get their learning and development is through either shadowing or being reverse shadowed in their interactions. So if it's like a recruiter screen or something like that, they would shadow a handful of individuals doing recruiter screens, and they would therefore get the same experience that they might get sitting in an open office listening to multiple people do a recruiter screen. Once they've done a certain amount of shadowing, then they're ready to go do a recruiter screen, and someone would shadow them a multitude of times, and then they would receive feedback through that experience. Then they would be off to the races on the recruiter screen stage. We're very data driven, and so we could tell through data without having even met a person what their effectiveness is looking like. So we know what our standard metrics are supposed to look like around recruiter screen effectiveness, and so we know after the training, if an individual is effective in their recruiter screens, then they'll convert at or above par. If their recruiter screens are converting well below or below par, then that tells us there's a problem in there, and we don't need to physically see somebody in order to know that. That's an example on the training front.
That's awesome. Now, when you say shadowing, do you mean they're listening into calls essentially?
Yeah.
And then vice versa?
If we were training someone to do podcast interviews, we'd have them just sit in on this call and do nothing but listen. Right. And then when it was time, we'd have them do the interview with you listening to them. Right. And then once the group feels comfortable, we'd let them off on their own.
Got it. All right. Okay, cool. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I love the fact that you're so analytical with the metrics. I'm a huge believer in that. Do you use any particular software for, measuring, tracking that sort of stuff?
Yeah, we track all of our recruiting activity in a system called Monday, monday.com.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, if you're familiar with it. It's like a productivity tool. And then all of that data gets sucked into a Redshift database, like a large database. And then that gets, there's a layer on top of that, a system called Looker, which is an analytics tool. And then we use Looker to look at all of our data at the recruiter level, at the job level, at the project level, and then at the total organization level.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, thanks for sharing that. So what about the camaraderie aspect? Like, you're not going for a beer on a Friday night. You're not sort of like chatting over, at the microwave or at lunchtime or, that sort of thing. So what, if anything, have you put in place to sort of replace that part of the experience of going to a job?
Yeah, that's a good question. The primary tool that our team uses to interact and communicate with each other is Slack.
And so I use that as well.
Yeah, and so with Slack, people are able to communicate, interact with each other regardless of location across a wide range of different, Slack calls them channels, so channels or really interests. And so You could have, 4 people in a channel on the same project, and they're interacting with each other about, hiring manager stuff and recruiting stuff and conversions and all this stuff. Then you have the next channel over, which is a multi-project team. So you have like three projects all together, all roll up to a manager. They're interacting with each other at that multi-project team level. Then you have like all company channels on a wide variety of topics, whether it's sports or music, or we have a channel dedicated just to like immigration, because we deal in the tech industry and there's all sorts of nuance regarding immigration. Or we have like a news channel. I mean, all sorts of different stuff. So people are getting a big component of what they would normally get in a physical office via Slack. And it's actually more powerful because in a physical office, your interactions are limited to who you kind of happen to come across with, who your little kind of like, who your physical clique might be. And you would miss out on the opportunity to interact with people in different locations. You'd start to develop kind of like local cultures that maybe are perhaps disparate from the broader culture. Mm-hmm. In this case, we operate. We're able to operate in more of a singular overall culture. And so people in LA can interact with people from North Carolina, can interact with people from Vegas in a similar topic. And so it actually creates a more powerful opportunity to interact with that regard. As far as the physical, we noticed that maybe it's just our company, but we didn't fit as much of the kind of like, go out and get a beer after work type of a culture. We have a pretty diverse culture. So for equal number of people that like to go drink after work, with equal number of people that like to go hit the gym. And so equal number of people that like to start the day early, start the day late. And so Slack works really well from us from that regard. And people who live local to each other are able to, develop and maintain local relationships just as they normally would in life.
Awesome. Yeah, I get that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear the story. Obviously, the shorter version of, startup to getting to 150 people, because very few recruiting firms get to that sort of, critical mass. Yeah. They tend to. The vast majority are sort of solo practitioners, like someone like Rich Rosen, for example. And then, among firms, they might build their practice to, 5, 10, 12 individuals, and they kind of like stay at that sort of size. And you guys made a decision. You definitely wanted to scale and create something, that was much bigger than the individual leaders.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about the highlights of that journey?
Yeah, sure. There were really, two main parts. So 7 years into our 18-year existence, we made the shift to what we refer to as a hybrid recruiting solution. Took on a business partner. My background is all on the agency side. His background was all on the internal recruiting side. And so we brought together what we defined as the best of both worlds to give our clients a third option. To what we consider to be, two suboptimal options as it relates to their ability to deliver on a total company's hiring need. So in that hybrid solution, in that hybrid experience, we operate under the brand of our companies, and we were considered like the SWAT team, like the go-to solution for high growth technology companies to deliver on unexpected, unnatural hiring goals. And we did a really good job at that. We did that for a 7-year period. 4 years ago, we shifted that hybrid model to what we referred to back then as flex. We basically saw a world where every technology company is hiring, but their pace of hiring was unique to them and slightly at a different pace than any other technology company was hiring, which meant that what they needed of a recruiting solution was slightly different than what the next company needed and what the next company needed. So we shifted our service model to what I described us doing right now. We basically realized that if we could build up as valuable of a recruiting collective as possible, team members who operate under a common culture, values driven, and very good at their specific part of growing a technology company, And if we could make our service model such that these individuals could be made available and assignable to growing technology companies, where their background matches the exact need of the hiring company, then that's a model that has legs and can scale. And so we conceptualized this. We prototype tested it in the market by saying, okay, let's see if we can get 50% of our business over to adapting the service model in a 3-month period. We ended up getting 100% of our business in 2 months. So the market ate it up basically, and that's what gave us the confidence to grow and develop this. This was mid-year 2016. We were at like 30, 35 people or something like that. And then from mid 2016 up until the end of last year, we set a goal to grow at 50% year over year. And we set that goal and we achieved that goal up until the end of last year. So we grew from like 40 to about 150 people over that 3.5 year period.
Wow.
This was through 220. Now, of course, 220 had different plans for us. And so we are no longer that size. And we are in the process of redefining and refiguring out what our future looks like. But that was what that 3.5 year journey looked like for us.
All right, awesome. I'd love to hear about your future plans. But first, I don't think I've ever heard of a company going from 40 to 150 in 4 years. I worked with a business over here in Europe who did it in probably 7 to 10 years. That's how did you deal with that level of growth? Because that creates a lot of headaches, right? In terms of systems, process, all of the stuff that you have to figure out. How did you manage that growth?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think part of it had to do with the service model. So service model and applicability of service model. So product market fit. We nailed that in mid 2016. So that contributed a ton to the growth from a market perspective. From an internal perspective, we organized into what we refer to as units. So we had units that were led by executive level recruiting individuals that had the capacity and capability and market capability to manage that shape or size of unit. So you could picture 40 people divided by 3, and that was what each unit was required to develop and grow. And then somewhere in the early to mid part of that, maybe like 17 or 18 or something like that, we realized that in order to be able to break through any growth ceilings that we had, we needed to develop next levels of leadership. So we put a ton of emphasis into internal development, leadership development, developing our next class of leads and then managers. That helped us achieve a certain level of growth. And then we went out in order to achieve an even next level of growth. We hired a chief people officer who came in and did an incredible job for us. We went out and hired more external managers. Every manager that we employed was able to extend the capacity of number of projects and number of people that we were able to employ. We grew our internal people operations team at our height beginning of this year. Late last year, we had a learning and development department. We had a data team. We had a multi-person internal recruiting team. We had a chief people officer. We had HR. We had diversity and inclusion team members. So quite a bit from an organizational perspective to provide support and infrastructure for our team. Another thing I'd say that was a contributor, we front loaded our organizational needs for whatever it is that we anticipated growing as part of the challenge that we experienced 2020. But we built our organizational capacity for 2020 in the back half of 2019, as an example. So
right.
We did that in order to provide more sustainable and positive experience for our team while we experience this respective level of growth. Of course, the downside of that is when the market changes, then you in hindsight grew too fast or grew in an unsustainable fashion, which is what we did learn in late last year and early this year.
Yeah, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. You might be interested in an interview I did with an entrepreneur in Australia called Sean McCambridge. He's grown to a similar sort of size firm as you guys over in that part of the world. And he was talking about the importance of leadership development being key because your company can only grow to the level of the leadership that you have in the business, right? Yeah. So it sounds like you guys have really spent a lot of time and effort and focus on that. So talk to me about how the world's changed for you guys and what adjustments have you had to make in your vision and your strategy?
Yeah, good question. And I'll tell you what's happening right now, and it'll probably be different in a little bit. But as far as what we saw of the world changing, we started to see some bumpiness in the market late last year and early this year. This is before anything COVID related took place. It's possible that our market, at least specifically the technology market, was a little overgrown. Specific example in our market was related to a company called WeWork, which was hit with some overvaluation challenges, and that sent a little bit of a shock and some fear into our respective market that the market was respectively working through late last year, early this year, and then COVID hit, and from our lens, COVID hit in a slow creep, and then it seemed to have magnified in a very accelerated rate. In our world, two things happened as it relates to COVID, because we're not on the front. The technology market, I recruit for high growth technology companies, so companies that people tend to interact with in a not physical fashion. So we didn't get hit the way the airline industry got hit, or the hotel industry got hit, or retail, or anything like that. So two things happened to our space. One, everyone was required to go remote. Our market was, for the most part, able to do that. Some companies did it, faster and easier than others, but everyone got there relatively unscathed. So I wouldn't put too much on the remote piece impacting our market or world. The second piece was the biggest impactor, and that was the fear that was infused in our market, primarily from venture capital community, the organizational leaders around the how long to prepare for in the event that COVID is, XYZ, insert kind of, fear story here. And that compelled a majority of our market to hit the sidelines and bunker down for whatever it is that they kind of foresaw as their respective future. There was a small percentage of companies that continued to hire very aggressively, continued to grow very aggressively because of increased demand. And those are the companies that, me and you and the whole world continued to rely on during this COVID experience. So companies like Zoom and food delivery services and education services and gaming, media companies, all these companies that we all continued to use that much more during our remote world. So we were very fortunate to continue to service those respective companies, but then all the companies that bunkered down, we saw a sizable slide in our business in the month of March. We retained about 40 to 50% of our business. And then we saw a floor develop in April and May. It was a slightly downward tilting floor, basically, that we saw develop in April and May. We're hoping to be finding that footing now in June, but it's still early to tell. Our business has reduced in size from, I think we started the year 157 people. We're right around 100 people right now, and we're doing our best to provide the level of employment that we can, the level of experience that we can for our team, but there's a big difference between what I would like to be providing from a employment responsibility and employment expectations perspective, and what we are able to provide, just given the uncertain, unstable, and unreliable nature of the market and world that we respectively live in.
Mm-hmm. That's a really detailed description. I appreciate that, like of sort of month by month what you could see happening. And I think a lot of people that will totally resonate for. You've really put a lot of thought into understanding what's happening so that you can respond to it. How have you managed sort of, since culture is key for your business, how have you managed kind of engagement and morale among the 100 people that you still have in place, and we want to retain them. We want them to, as the demand increases, for them to be effective and perform, again. How do you deal with that issue when people are really feeling kind of under stress?
Yeah, good question. And I will say, I just remembered that this podcast will be broadcast 4th of July. So by 4th of July, and this has already been communicated to our company, we'll have just completed a reduction in force. That's already been communicated to our team and company and those affected. We'll be closer to the 50 or 60 person mark by then. So that means a two-third slide in company size from beginning of the year to present date over half year period. How we maintained our culture. If you ask different people at our company, you'll probably get different answers. Some will say they did a poor job. They haven't. All of the many things that we've come to love about this company over the years don't exist or are different, or insert kind of the what's missing language there. One of the things that we have done over this period of time is we went from meeting with our team and company at a company level quarterly, because when we're going through year after year of predictable, sustainable growth, reporting on that growth from a company perspective becomes same old. And so you from a company leadership perspective, you go from meeting weekly to meeting monthly, to getting feedback that says, hey, do we need to do this every month? Can't we just meet quarterly? You tell us the same stuff. So we went from meeting quarterly during this high growth period to a culture in the beginning of the year where things were changing fast, but we didn't have a setup. We didn't have a place to communicate that level of transparency, that level of openness with our company. So we immediately in mid-March shifted to weekly. Weekly, we refer to as all hands. So every week we get together and we talk about whatever it is that happened that week, good, bad, or ugly. Most of it is, little bit of good, mostly bad, and then some version of either celebrating or acknowledging or whatever it is that we can. But we've been doing that weekly since mid-March, and that's come to be something that the company can rely on and know as a place they could expect to see the whole company together, expect to see leadership talk about whatever it is that has happened that week. So that's become a part of our culture. We instituted, because everyone works from home, it's difficult for us to extend PTO at an extended basis, because people aren't really people aren't really trying to go on extended vacations, and two, we're hyper focused on delivering for our clients or respective roles. We instituted a mandatory 2 days of PTO per month per person.
Sorry, PTO.
Personal time off. So days off. Days off. Sorry, yeah, days off. So we instituted mandatory 2 days off per month per person. And what that has done is it's forced people to take time off. Some people really appreciate and enjoy it. Other people, who might have otherwise continue to focus their energies on work, were able to take a day, we're able to take 2 days and get that, refresh that they respectively needed. So we found that people have really appreciated that. We've basically done whatever we can with the assets and tools that we have. I'll also say a final thing that we've been able to do over the last few months is we were fortunate recipients of the PPP loan that the government has provided, and so with those dollars, we've been able to reemploy a number of folks, and with the folks that we're able to reemploy, but not necessarily have the client facing work for. We were able to do some pretty cool stuff with around adding value to the community and those individuals' respective worlds as well from a culture perspective. So,
oh, wow. Listen, I appreciate the honesty, Boris, and you didn't spin that. You just, straight up, like, this is what's going on. So I really appreciate that. And I respect for that. You alluded to value-added things. Is Binc Boost one of those things?
Yeah.
Could you say a little bit about Binc Boost? Because I saw that in your email signature, and it's really cool.
Yeah. Binc Boost is a program where we have dedicated recruiters engaging with people in the technology industry, helping them with a wide variety of job search related items. We basically conceptualize this in knowing that we're going to be bringing a lot of folks back to employment as a result of our PPP funds. We wanted to do something with those individuals that we thought would be special, unique, and value add. And so we conceptualized this Boost program. Basically, the way that it worked is we set up a page on our website that allowed individuals to submit some information about themselves. And then our recruiter or recruiters would reach out to those individuals, schedule 30-minute Boost calls with those folks. And those calls would cover anything like resume review, LinkedIn setup, job search strategy, interview preparation, networking, connections to companies, et cetera. And so at any point in time, we had 10 to 15 recruiters engaging with Boost candidates. And so I think in total, we ended up, we're at about the tail end of the program. We ended up engaging with maybe about 600 candidates or so. And it was really cool because usually recruiters interact with candidates to get them a job or for some purpose. There's usually some interest in engaging with that candidate. What our team particularly loved about participating in Boost is there was no agenda besides to help the person. And so that came through in the calls with the candidates because the candidate also didn't have to pretend like they were trying to accomplish something by interacting with a recruiter. They didn't have a job they were trying to get there. They just needed help, and our recruiter just wanted to offer help. And so a lot of very genuine interactions, a lot of very fulfilled based interactions. We had candidates tell our recruiters that they just really appreciate having someone to talk to. The words of encouragement, like the littlest things in the world that our recruiters didn't even know were valuable, they found they found kind of a recognition, appreciation for their ability to extend back and offer. So yeah, that's a little bit about Boost. Now that now that our PPP program is finishing and we'll be retiring it, we're converting the Boost page into just a resource page. So instead of it being a form that future folks could fill out, we're going to have all the articles and all the content and all the kind of goodness that was created in that program just live for anyone to visit and use at their interest.
Love it. So essentially it's pro bono consulting for people who might be in transition or who, are looking for a job or have been affected by COVID. Yeah. And that's awesome. I'm sure that will come back to you in terms of goodwill, if nothing else.
We think so.
I know you weren't doing it for that, but plus gives your team members that feel good factor as well. So that's awesome. So final subject then is differentiation, because the fact is 99.9% of recruiting firms sound the same. And the problem is that, if we can't explain to a client what is unique or special about our service, then there's no way the client is they're just going to assume that it's all pretty much the same thing you get from one agency to another. And but you have a different philosophy around that. Could you talk a bit about how you guys have developed a value proposition or advice for other firms? Because it's not easy, right? If it was easy, we would all have a clear value proposition. So what advice can you give to leaders on creating something that's real differentiation?
Yeah. Our philosophy from day one, from 18 years ago, was to offer, we had two guiding philosophies. One was to offer a differentiated alternative to growing technology companies. So we always wanted to offer something differentiated. So we therefore always paid attention to the market in terms of whatever was considered status quo. And then our goal was to offer something differentiated from that so that hiring leaders had an alternative from whatever was status quo. We think that's certainly important. One, to offer distinguished value. We think status quo is something to fight against in perpetuity. And so offering something distinguished from status quo, we think, inherently offers that company, a unique set of value. It also has like the secondary value of unique branding, unique positioning for us as a company that we could benefit from for a business perspective. What's interesting around the differentiation piece is, the market changes, the world changes, companies' needs change, therefore status quo changes. Therefore, you always have to, a company that values differentiation always has to, stay focused on whatever it is that the market is doing, so that you can continue to differentiate in the form of offering a unique kind of value proposition. When we first started out 18 years ago, our unique value proposition was very focused specialization in a very specific segment of the market. We only placed Siebel consultants. We only placed enterprise implementation consultants. So we're very specific around what we did, and we were very disciplined around saying no to anything that wasn't that, and that helped kind of strengthen whatever it was that our differentiated approach was. And then, as the market developed, for the last few years, our differentiated approach was one, our flexible service model, and two, our culture. We are in the process right now of defining what it is that will distinguish us in the future. It is uncertain and unclear. I can't pitch you on what our future value proposition is. We'll have to do a part two to the podcast.
Sounds good.
Still in development.
Sounds good. But what's the sort of thought process though that you will go through to evolve your value proposition to the next iteration? Yeah,
I can't say it's like an overly deliberate. I could probably come up with an overly deliberate strategy, but in general, you have to acknowledge what it is that the market wants. You have to acknowledge what it is that other people in the market are already doing that fits what the market wants. You have to acknowledge what your assets are. So, like, what do you have? And for us, like, we have a great client portfolio. We have a great team. We have a number of assets. Every company has assets. And then from those assets, you have to then go through a very creative exercise to explore how you could position your assets in order to offer what the market wants, but that no one else is offering. And through that, you kind of land on something distinguished. And then you test it. And if the market likes it, then it works.
I love it. And I will take you up on doing a part two, Boris, for sure. Meanwhile, I actually have a webinar on how to differentiate your recruiting service. I can't remember the website address, but I'll put a link in the show notes if anyone wants to check that out. So listen, to find out more about Binc Search, it's bincsearch.com. Boris, thank you so much. This has been really enjoyable, interesting conversation. I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, it's been great connecting, great going down memory lane, and crystallizing some of these very real thoughts and experiences that we're living through right now.
All right. Well, thank you, sir, and I'll look forward to next time.
Yeah, you as well. Have a good one, Mark. Bye.